Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed, and we are reading the Phaedo. Now, first of all, I am streamlining these videos a little bit more, so they will be posted onto YouTube sooner, and I'll be including the Stephanus numbers of the text we're reading, and the page number of the specific PDF in the description of the videos below. So that's what we'll be doing. That's going to get the videos out to you sooner and more regularly. Yeah, so also thank you for everybody participating on Discord. There's a lot of interesting and fun things being shared, ideas, and that's been pretty cool. So thank you for that. And now today we are reading the Phaedo, of course. We are up to page 44. That's Stephanus number 82E in the text for those reading along themselves. And so far, Socrates just laid down a whole bunch of interesting stuff last time to do with what sounds like reincarnation. Asking us the questions, what kind of reincarnation would you like? Would you like to be a wolf or a donkey or a bee or a regular bloke? Or would you rather enter the realm of the gods? And he talks about, in order to be that, we have to be the most good daimons. Of course, that's a puzzle. We can add that with our phronesis puzzle, one of the key puzzles of the text. What the heck is a most good daimon? And it's something that we really want to know, especially considering how important it is for us to enter into that realm, do our life's work here. It seems to be some sort of standard for what we want to achieve in our lifetime, so that we can be with a like kind in the next life. And of course, this doesn't just apply to your next life, it applies to this life too, because we are learning all the way through that philosophy is the art and practice of death and dying. So, let's jump into the text. And there's also a question we kind of skipped over last time. What's all this talk about mummies? These Egyptian embalmers who wrap bodies in bandages and things that allow the body to stay alive for a longer period of time. Is there any significance to that? I don't know. Some people have suggested that if the art and practice of dying is philosophy, then maybe that kind of preparation of our physical body will allow us to leave for a longer period of time without worrying about our body decaying, so we can come back, so we can go and spend longer periods of times doing philosophy in this realm with these daemons, gods, and better men. I'm not sure. It's a puzzle, of course. So let's jump into the text. Let's start at 80D. And as a bit of a lead into where we are now, let's jump in. Socrates is saying, on the one hand, I gotta stop saying that. It's not needed. It's just there. The soul will the soul, that which is formless, which wings her way to the other realm, that which is noble and pure and formless, as if truly to Hades, in company with the good and phronesis god, to which, God willing, my soul will soon be winging, will then our self be scattered, which is surely of this kind and nature, and be destroyed as soon as she leaves the body? As the majority of humans say? Far from it, O dear Cebes and Simmias. But what must happen is much more like this. If on the one hand she is pure upon leaving, dragging along nothing of the body, as far as she had no voluntary association with it, but avoided it, she gathered self together, self in herself, inasmuch as she always practiced this. But this is nothing else than practicing philosophy rightly, which is what? Practicing to die. How curious that is what it means to practice philosophy rightly. Or is this not what practicing dying should be? Most absolutely it is. On the one hand, is it not... Stop saying that. Is it not the case? I can't help it if I'm reading it. Men and there, this and that. This is it not the case that when self abides in this way, she makes her way to the formless, to that which is like self, the divine and deathless and phronesis, which upon her, so learning more about not just the realm of the divine and deathless, but also this thing which is phronesis, which is our other big question. Because we want both truth, which is in this realm of being, and also this virtue called phronesis. And it's like self, which is curious. That which is like self, the divine and deathless and phronesis, which upon arriving, self will be a good daemon. So something about being there. Having phronesis makes you the good daemon. Having rid self of wandering, of ignorance, fear, and wild desires. Don't we want that? And other human defects. And on the other hand, just as it is said concerning the initiates, that she will truly spend the rest of time with the gods. Shall we say it in this way, O Cebes, or some other way? In this way, by Zeus. Whereas on the other hand, I do indeed believe that if she is stained and impure upon leaving the body, inasmuch as she has always been associated with it, and cared for it, and loved it, and having been beguiled by the desires and pleasures of the body, so as to believe that nothing else is true other than the physical, which one can touch and see and drink and eat and use for sexual purposes, thus being accustomed to hate and fear and avoid this, that is dark and formless to the eyes, but intelligible and tangible to philosophy. Do you believe that a soul in this condition will depart pure, self according to self? In no way whatsoever. So don't be beguiled by the desires and pleasures of the body. Don't think that nothing other than that is true. Of course, that's a whole class of ways of thinking we've been talking about. The using the dialectic to provide a ladder for our development, and how we use that in our conversation, and how we can recognize that ladder in the Parmenides too. Specifically, states of thinking and states of mind. So we see over here, this is a loose sort of diagram we can recognize right at the bottom of the list. Nihilism. Which is kind of, there isn't even the physical world. But then materialism, relativism, reductionism is another one, reducing things to its smallest physical components. And there are other sorts of ways of thinking in here that Socrates is pointing to here. When you think that only the physical world is true. The Stoic philosophical tradition, which is uses the same words that we use in Platonic philosophy, only we stay below this line. This line is underneath is you only think there's the physical world. And then above this line is kinds of ways of thinking where you think that there is a metaphysical or a divine realm. There are lots of different ways in there. There are religious people. There are people who think that there is a God, but they have forsaken them. There are people who can connect with the divine through the logos, which is what we are seeking to reach ourselves. And then various levels of experience of the divine. Of course, we have various spiritual traditions like Taoism and Hinduism and Buddhism. And of course, above the level of being, we can recognize, because it's a triad, becoming, being, and the one self, which is the first hypothesis of Parmenides. So here he's saying, hey, the people who are below this line are going to be in trouble when they die. Well, and in this life, of course, they're going to be accustomed to hating and fearing and avoiding that which is invisible to the eyes, this realm, but tangible and intelligible to philosophy. They're going to stay below this line. We know a lot of people like that. This is kind of, I think, at least in European cultures, this is the most common way of thinking, I think. So let's see what follows for this sort of a person. If they think that nothing else is true other than the physical, which they can touch and see and drink and eat and use for sexual purposes, you'll become accustomed to the very opposite that we want to be accustomed to. They will be accustomed to hate and fear and avoid this, that which is dark and formless to the eyes, but intelligible and tangible to philosophy. Do you think a soul in that condition will depart pure? And the big expression, self according to self. Somehow to be yourself alone. We talk about sun usia, keeps company and has intercourse with the body. Of course, it doesn't just mean sexual intercourse. The word is sun usia, a kind of additive connection. So usia is the opposite. It's where you can be self by self. It's to turn around completely upon yourself, like the image of the snake eating its tail. The aurora borealis, that image is to represent the mind's capacity to turn about upon itself, completely separated from anything that draws it away, to experience itself by itself. That seems to be the doorway into this realm of being that is actually true. And of course, we can see that principle reflected on all sorts of different levels. We've been talking about turning away not just from our physical senses, eating and drinking and all those sorts of things that you can get wrapped up in, think it's the most true and become addicted to. But we've been talking also about our tangents, our counterattacks, our distracting thoughts, our inner critic, and how that can take us away from being self according to self when we do this, when we read, when we do our dialectics, when we mythologize our dialectics. Other things are more important. And of course, we can take it into another level and say, hey, what about our reincarnations? Do you want to be self according to self? To be pure so you can dwell with better gods and men and daemons? Or do you want to be distracted? Do you think, the life of a donkey is going to be better? I can be gluttonous. The life of a wolf can be better. I can be a tyrant. The life of a bee is going to be better. So even in our reincarnations, all the same sorts of principles at all different levels. How well can you unify your concentration, unify your attention, unify your direction, self according to self, and awaken this usia? It's fascinating how the logos reflects itself on many layers, which allows us to have this thing we're talking about. Because there's levels to reality. There's levels to your dimensions that you're perceiving through your state of mind, and levels to your ways of thinking. We don't start enlightened for some reason. We start forgetting. And there seems to be a climb that we all go through as human beings. Of course, we recognize that. We recognize that we are here to learn. Babies don't know everything. We go to school to learn. We do activities to be better. Philosophy, as we've been saying the last few podcasts, is learning the game rules, becoming rational. If there's a ladder, why not figure out what it is? And why not learn how to climb it? And why not have fun climbing it with mastery? That's what we're doing. And one of the things that allow for there to be such a ladder is this unfolding of the logos in different layers, which is why we can look for different kinds of expressions of the things as we read. So, thus I do believe that when she is seized by the grip of the corporeal, interesting, can grab us, who keeps company and has sunusia with the body by always being in its service. There's the question, who's ruling who? And through all this attention, so that's another idea, attention, self has been made of a similar nature as the body, very much so. So don't make yourself or your soul a similar nature as the body. Go the other way. Thus, it is necessary to believe, O friend, so we start with belief, that this body is burdensome and heavy and earthly and visible, and through which surely such a soul, being heavy, is dragged back again to the physical world, in fear of the unseen, the formless, and of Hades, the afterlife. Just as we are told, wallowing about tombs and grave, about which shadowy phantoms of souls have surely been seen, images supplied by such souls that have not been set free in a pure way, but participate of the visible, and on account they are visible. So this is talking about how we mythologize this idea that we keep getting dragged back into our physical body until we are purified, just like ghosts and ghost stories that are said to hang around this physical realm because they are not yet been freed. So we can see them as ghosts because they're attached to this physical realm. It is very likely, O Cebes. So Cebes says it's very likely Socrates, and Socrates picks up his language and rolls with it. So this is the unfolding or the rolling along. We talked about the unfolding or the rolling over of the logos into different levels of reality. So too does Socrates use it in his speech. That is very likely indeed. It is very likely, O Cebes. And moreover, these are not at all the souls of the good, but the souls of the thoughtless, which must necessarily wander thereabouts, justly requiting. Now that's an interesting idea. So we've got this idea of justice and this idea of requitals. This is a big deal. Let's nail down this word. Not that one. Yes, that one. So let's bring up the internet, please. There we go. Tinose. What does tinose? Tinose means requital. Let's look it up. To pay a price in return or recompense. Recompense. Pay the price. pay your debt. That makes sense. So this requitals a kind of paying of our debt for how we have lived. For having been nourished previously in our previous life in a defective way, and inasmuch as they wander indeed because of this, until their desire for that which they follow most closely, for the corporeal, must bind them to some body. But they are then, as it is likely, bound to such characters that correspond to whatever they would have usually happened to have attended in their lives. So it goes on, how we live our life, how you live is how you die. But also, vice versa in philosophy. How well you practice the art of death and dying is how well you'll live. Because that's what allows us to reach being and truth, giving us the paradigm for our virtues, but also the initiation, if we can stay in that realm with that part of the soul, that's nature is able to stay in that realm, the eternal virtue, phronesis. What kind of characters? Well, those who are tended to gluttony and arrogance and drunkenness, until finally without even noticing, because we are doing what is required to recognize the nature of reincarnation, nature of our characters, and how that affects our life and our death. So these people who are tending to gluttony, arrogance, and drunkenness, they're not doing philosophy, so they won't notice it. Again, we're learning the game rules. They don't notice the game rules. They're kind of being blown around in the wind. We call that being bound to fate, the thing that we want to purify ourselves from so we can become truly free. Without noticing, they are likely to be bound to the tribes of donkeys and other such animals. Now, I believe, just for fun, that's a goat. What you say is thus quite likely. But on the other hand, those who have indeed highly esteemed injustice and tyranny and plunder will be bound to the tribes of wolves. Meow. And hawks. And kites, which is a kind of hawk, I think. Or where else will we say such natures go? Thebes says, for their neglectfulness into such natures. Socrates continues, is it not clearly the case then that the destination of the others will also surely be those characters that are most like each one of the pursuits and practices, the attentions, the cares, the pursuits and the practices, where you put your attention on, what you care for and nourish, what you pursue, and what you habitually practice. All of these words fit. You'll become the characters that you practice, and you do those things too. Clearly so. How could it not be? Is it not also the case then that the most good daemons of these, so here is our standard of excellence, will go to the best realm, and those who have practiced popular and social virtues or excellence. So we have this is the ideal, it seems, of virtue or excellence, but there are popular ones that they call sound-mindedness, call even-temperedness, and call justice, that arise out of habit and without care, without philosophy and intellect. And we know people like that, people who are otherwise good people. They're not, being lecherous or slave to their pleasures. They're otherwise good people, but they have not got there without philosophy and intellect. They have what we would call socially, popularly, virtuous and just. What about these? Interesting. So he's calling these the most good daemons. Interesting. Right. So I guess it's what we would call them. So he's distinguishing popular use of the expression, the most happy people, the most good and happy people, from the truth. Socrates has a habit of doing this. Don't we call them this? Don't we say this? In the Republic, he gets asked about what is the good itself, the good self. Now we recognize that as the ultimate, from becoming as the lesser, being as the greater, and ultimate as the one self, or the good self. And in the Republic, he says, by the way, the experience of being, goodness, as an experience in being, isn't that what we call the good? So he kind of does this with people sometimes. He distinguishes the popular use of certain terms with the true, the ultimate. These are likely to arrive in a social and gentle tribe, perhaps such as with bees. I have a bee sound effect. No. Bees or wasps or ants. Or indeed, then again, into the same tribe of human beings, and so moderate people arrive out of cells. So they seem to be stuck in a loop. The same tribe of human beings they were in, who've done it without philosophy and news. But it is indeed not lawful to enter into the genus or the realm of the gods without having practiced philosophy, and by being perfectly pure upon departing, other than by the one who loves learning. And of course, we recognize learning as remembering. Thus, on account of these logos, O companions Sybius and Cebes, those who practice philosophy in the right way refrain from all the desires relating to the body, and are steadfast, and do not surrender themselves to those selves, to the desires of the body, not by some fear of losing their property and being poor, just as the many and the money lovers fear, nor again of fear of dishonor and ill repute, just like the ambitious and lovers of honors do, seeing that they refrain from themselves. So these sorts of people who love to be honored, fame, don't chase their desires, not because they don't want them, because they're afraid of getting a bad rep. And those who love money don't pursue their desires, not because they don't want them, but because they fear of being poor and losing their property, spending all their money on their vices. But we are different. It would not be proper of them, Socrates, certainly not by Zeus, certainly not for all those on the one hand, O Cebes, those who care anything for the soul of themselves, for they do not live in the service of the body, do not welcome talking or walking according to these ways of selves, as they do not know where they are going. But on the other hand, they must not be led in the opposite direction and turn to that. They must turn to what? To philosophy, and accomplish that deliverance and purification of hers, following wherever philosophy leads. So, don't model yourself over those people. Don't walk and talk the way they walk and talk. follow the lead in the opposite direction of philosophy, giving you a kind of deliverance and purification. Now, let's copy this word. And see what is meant by this term deliverance. Paste it in this website. Oh, it's 2 words. So I think it might be the first word. So copy that. Ekinis. That's how you say it. Paste it in our Greek dictionary. Ekinis. The person there having that thing. What? In the neighborhood. Yeah, let's try a different one. The person there, that thing. Okay. Let's try the other word. Loosing, releasing, parting. Oh, I see. Parting that place. So yeah, I guess deliverance is right. But the 2 Greek words are parting that place. Let's highlight that. This one. And leave a note. Add note. Leaving that place. Leaving or loosening from that place. Or releasing, emptying, parting. So let's I like releasing, leaving or releasing from that place. And a purification, following where philosophy leads. This is where we finished last time. How, O Socrates? I will tell you, for the ones who love learning recognize that when philosophy took hold of the soul of selves, she was wholly imprisoned in and clinging to the body. Thus, she compelled to consider her reality through this, just as through a cage, but not self by self, but wallowing in every kind of darkness, perceiving that the strangest figure of this imprisonment is that it happens to be through the desires. The strangest feature is that you are imprisoned through the desires, since self-imprisoned will be the greatest assistant of her own imprisonment. So, those of us who get into philosophy realize that we start off, that when philosophy took hold of us, here we have lovers of learning and lovers of philosophy, these two, which are the two that go together as a duad. You have to love learning, developing your understanding, raising yourself through the cognitive functions, recovering memory. Why? Because Sophia is the logos directed towards being. So you have to love the developing your learning, but also be directing it towards being, truth. Because that's Sophia. So we have a love of learning and a love of Sophia. Philomathesis, philosophia. And we see that, we saw that previously in our triad. Yeah. thesis, lover of learning, and philosophy. These are the two, the bottom that are up there. And philophrenesis is where we're aiming for. And of course, the opposite. If you're a lover of body, that's the opposite of philophrenesis. Philos, soggy tomatoes, philosomatos. And that can make you a lover of honors or lover of riches. And we just hit those two a second ago, didn't we? That people who have a kind of popular virtue of justice or temperance, kind of social popular ones, only do it because they are a lover of riches. So they're motivated by that, and not only that, but fear. We fear the loss of the riches. We fear a loss of the honors, causing us to rein in our pursuit of our desires. Interesting. Motivated by fear. Compared to love. So fear versus desire. So we were in a cage, clinging to the body. That's how, and I'm sure we can all relate to this. When we first learned about philosophy, when we first got into it, that's kind of our world. All we knew was our physical world. All we knew is how to perceive through our senses. All we related to as most real was seeking and pursuing our greatest pleasures, our greatest fantasies. That's how we start. That's an imprisonment, because the self-imprisonment is the greatest assistant of their own imprisonment. What an expression. Self-imprisonment will be the greatest assistant of your own imprisonment. Interesting. Then just as I say that lovers of learning recognize that when philosophy takes hold of their soul, in such a state of affairs, she gently encourages her and tries to free her by revealing to her, on the one hand, that searching through the eyes is full of deceit. But this is also the case through the ears and the other senses. Then persuades her, on the one hand, to withdraw from these, insofar as she is not compelled to use those things, those selves, the it. I think this is the lowercase s, meaning it. So, what does philosophy do? Encourages, tries to free, and reveals. So if you're doing a dialectic on philosophy, he's giving us some terms. What does philosophy do in relation to the soul? So self to others. Let's make some notes. So it's giving us a dialectic on philosophy. Is the S term in relation to soul. O term. So that's the dialectic. There's our two terms. Dialectic, two. So we understand one by the other. So if we do a dialectic on philosophy using soul as our other term, we're going to learn more about the soul and we're going to learn more about philosophy. Right? And we can see this is also how analogy works. Talked last time about one of the tricky tricksters.
Sneaky little hobbitses.
Games that philosophers play is, oh, you want to learn about this thing here. You want to know about soul after death, because you're afraid that you might lose your soul when you die. Well, to understand this, we have to compare it to something else. Let's talk about the realm of being. So we can judge whether the soul is more like being or the physical world or the body. So this is the sneaky thing. you understand more about the soul and you answer this question, but the O term is actually the higher term. This is the fun game that you can see that some philosophers play. Fascinating to see in real time. So you've learnt more about the higher term by doing a dialectic that rubs two ideas together. Sure, you're answering your question here, but the framework for answering it means that you're also going to be learning more about the higher term. This was Seebees' argument. Seebees' question. So we learned about both, which is also metaphor. You learn about something to understand this other thing because they relate in some way. You understand one in relation to the other, in relation to self, in relation to other. Of course, you start by self in relation to self. No space. Where does one come from? Move this over. You start by, of course, having A and B. If the S term is, and then B, section B is if B is if the S term is not. And of course, is we're referring to be existence. So a dialectic is on things that exist. So that's what is. Does it exist? Is it in the realm of being? And we're seeing more in what we're reading about how important that is, because if you only think the physical is real, you'll become imprisoned. And the best you can do is kind of a vice version of the virtues. And it won't help your incarnation as well. You'll come back as a donkey or a wolf or a bee. Best you can be is a bee. Or come back again, go around in a circle.
Meow.
So, we saw that we got a bunch of ideas here. Bring it up. She gently encourages her and tries to free her by revealing to her on the one hand that searching through the eyes is full of deceit, but this is also the case through the ears and the other senses. Then she persuades her, so persuading, on the other hand, to withdraw from these insofar as she is not compelled to use those, but summons her to gather together and collect herself into herself, the true seer, then to trust only self and no other than self, any one of the real beings, self by self, which she would intellect, nous, self according to self, and on the other hand to consider other than being real, whatever she would consider through any other means in any other ways, as in no way leading to the truth. So, we have a bunch of things that we can say about self according to others. Others, of course, we would say, well, what does philosophy do to the soul? Encourages. It tries to free the soul. It reveals to the soul that the eyes are full of deceit, that physical senses deceive. Persuades to withdraw. Persuades. ADES. Persuades to withdraw. Insofar as she is not compelled to use. So there is a level that he recognized. A level he recognizes of some level of compulsion. Summons her to collect together. Summons. Summons her to collect together, to gather together. Self by self. So you see how we're getting a list of terms? So Socrates is giving us enough clues to recognize the importance of the dialectic, to recognize the language of the dialectic as this whole yoga he's been talking about, but he's also helping us out by giving us key terms. He's giving us the adjectives to describe the relationship between the two substances, the two nouns, to fill out our dialectic. So he's giving us what we need to solve the puzzle. Kind of like how dreams work, by the way. So I encourage you to jump in. We're on page 44 in the text. This is 83A. If you even write a note, 83A. Define these adjectives and make your own. Have fun with it. And of course, share it on Discord. So summons it. What does philosophy do? Summons the body, summons the soul to collect herself together, self into self, trust only self and no other than self, any one of the real beings, self by self, which she would intellect according to self. So hey, what do you want to trust? Any of those beings, which are also self by self, which will be you. If you are collecting yourself self by self and you purify yourself in that kind of a way, you will be like that which you are like. This is the truth here. Mind turning about upon itself and knowing itself. And trust those beings. So we talked about wisdom being the virtue of planning, the planning part of the soul. That's the paradigm that you should trust. That's truth. Use that as your model of beauty and justice and so on. The beings that you would intellect, self according to self. And on the other hand, to consider as other than being real, whatever you would consider through any other means. So now we're having a paradigm. This is a big thing in philosophy. One way of putting people off philosophy is bombarding them with a bunch of different stupid facts and opinions. Here are a bunch of books that you'll never read. Feel bad about that because you're not the kind of... You don't have the kind of autism that will allow you to endlessly read these boring old books by these boring old men that have no significance to you. Put you off. Most people are put off from philosophy. But here we have the opposite. We have something against that you can use as a model for truth. Of all those opinions that you have to read if you do a philosophy course at university, Kant's opinions, Hegel's opinions, and so on. What do you do with them? They're meaningless. Store them in a crate somewhere? That's not how memory works. It has to be meaningful for you to remember. Hey, if Pokemon is meaningful to you, then you'll remember the Pokemon rap, or you'll remember the Pokemon names, or you'll know Bulbasaur's moveset. It has to be meaningful to you. So here is what makes it meaningful. This is why true philosophy is so fantastic, so different from how it's usually taught. We can have something where we can trust as the truth, the paradigm, and it's against that. So even if we do go ahead and read Kant and then read Hegel, we'll just be approaching them the same way we approach anyone and even ourselves. To what level are they judging according to the real being self by self? Oh, Kant ignores that. He says we can't know that realm. Kant says you can't. Well, he's got a problem. We can recognize at what level of intellect he's at. How close to being self according to self is he? How collected together is he? And we could also probably recognize in his words where he deviates from the path, from the logos. So we recognize the two questions we ask of anybody: where you're at and where you're stuck. Where you're at in your logos and nous. Nous, intellect, and logos, the activity of philosophy, the learning, the dialectic, where you're at in both, and where you're stuck. Where you on your shadow ladder? How far are you through recognizing your problem that you're here to discover? We all have one. Don't feel bad about it. Don't feel ashamed about it. Go out and pursue meaningful goals. This one being the most meaningful, so that you can bring up more information about your puzzle. It's going to be challenging, but it's what you're here for. It also can be fun if you're in a community of like-minded individuals who are also on the path, which is why I have this podcast and this channel. To encourage each other to pursue our most meaningful goals with excellence, and to have a place we can go to reflect on the blocks that came up. So we can practice our dialectic with such a person, and they can practice thinking through the dialectic, which is the learning, the purification, but also can apply it to understanding their problems so they can be freer to reach their most meaningful goals and understand those goals themselves. How can they be doing it with excellence? How can they be doing their pursuit in a way that furthers this? The learning and purification of their soul that they're here for. How can they do their work with excellence? And how can they free them from their problems? And I'm grateful for all those who see the value in that and have liked the videos on YouTube, have joined me in the chat along the way, joined the Discord, shared their ideas already. It's been great. A lot of fun. Oh, welcome to the chat. Chatter has awakened and has been reading the Parmenides all day. What have you seen in the Parmenides, and what's that been like, reading it all day? Oh, right. The sail over all, or just the part of the sail? Yeah, what have you seen in that? Has a weird effect. That part made me laugh. Oh. What did you find funny about it? And later, I stood up to my dad. Wow. How did that go? whole sail or part of the whole. Cool. So we're talking about in the Parmenides, Socrates is trying to understand how we share in these beings. These beings we're talking about here, that we're trying to collect ourselves together through this kind of self-ousia to share in the beings. Socrates thinks, well, maybe we participate in the beings like they're a sail and we're like a part of the sail touches us. So that everything can be beautiful or can participate in the idea of beauty and being, just like a sail covering all the people. So here he's saying, oh, by the way, these beings that we are wanting to be like ourselves, to participate in or to share in that way, this is the truth. So, the difference between the bombarding of philosophy of opinions, they don't give you a truth, a metric of truth. In philosophy, we have a metric, we have a standard, we have a paradigm against which we can judge what's true. So we can make sense of these texts that are thrown at us. And of course, we might not be interested in Hegel or Kant's opinions until we've got the truth ourselves. Like, why do we care about what Kant thought? Well, maybe there's a historic reason. If Kant's part of a lineage from the Latin tradition that was a counterattack to Socrates, it might be worthwhile to point out where he missed the mark, why he missed the mark, the implications of him missing the mark, because these sorts of people did affect historical figures. Hitler famously was very influenced by Nietzsche. Our capitalist system, very influenced by the thinking of Adam Smith. The way of thinking in modern scientific thinking influenced by Hegel. So that has an interest for that, to right the ship of humanity. You've been having intense dreams. So you've been reading the Parmenides, you've been finding something funny about the Parmenides, you've been using your logos to speak up to your old teachers, and you've been having intense dreams that have a professorial element. Sounds like you're right in the mix of things. Good for you. You are soaring like an airplane. That was the meaning of that drop. Must have saw the real thing in the sail. Interesting. So, any other means of thinking other than by gathering yourself together and being and intellecting through nous, the real beings, anything else than that is not true. Since on the one hand, such things as those are sensible and visible, or on the other hand, that which self sees is intelligible and unseen. Therefore, the soul of the true philosopher, let's highlight that because that's going to be interesting, thinks to herself that her deliverance, or we saw that word before, where's deliverance? Place leaving. So this is the leaving or the freeing. What was it? Releasing. R-E-L-E-A-S, releasing. So she says that this self-releasing from the body must not be opposed, and in this way keeps away from pleasures and desires and pains and fears. So these are the big four that we also recognized in the virtue of courage in the Republic. He mentions pleasures and pains, desires and fears. So it might be worth us at some stage in the near future going back into the Republic, or going into the Republic, but only to the level, into the area where he talks about the virtues, because virtues are a big thing that's being brought up here. In the chat, myself has an even more profound feeling like what I pretend to be myself, not a likeness of it, that has many possibilities but one. Oh, I see. So, right, so this is a kind of yoga, a kind of fake it till you make it, but what you're faking is the truth. It might feel interesting that we're talking about courage, because courage is to hold on to the truth that we're learning through the logos that starts as a belief. Where did he say belief? We just read it. Because these are likely accounts. We don't know them until we get there. Belief. He's mentioned it a few times. So we hold on to what we believe and trust through the logos in spite of our pleasures, pains, fears, and desires. That's courage. So if we're learning about ourselves being of this nature, the self by itself with real beings, and we're also learning through the Parmenides about the one self, which is the cause of even that kind of pure state of being, then it's not going to feel familiar, comfortable. It's not going to be what we're used to. So one method or yoga is to practice what you're learning is true, even though it feels like you're faking it. So fake it till you make it, but using the anagogic way. So imagine the kind of possibilities that were closed to you that you'll be free to share in if you were this way, if you were like Socrates, if you could see the beings, if you could apprehend eternity, if you recognized that there was no death, but there was a repercussions or consequences from your way of living. And you could be the highest happiness. The word good daemon is also the same word for happiness or the highest happiness. In the Greek, good daemon and happiness are tied together. So yeah, interesting. Pleasures, pain, pleasures, desires, fears are a blurry mess of the body, right? Why should I fear the matters of the body? Right, and we just talked about how people who have who are not philosophers are do what they do because they are in the grip of the corporeal, in the grip of the body, and they are afraid. Where is it? Here. They fear losing their property and being poor. They fear dishonor and ill repute. So there's the two kinds of ways of being when you're attached to the body. Pursuing your desires, the lower part of the soul, riches, or honor, fame, being well thought of, love of honor, love of riches, philotimos, philokrimatos. These are the two consequences that follow if you're a lover of the body, and it's fear motivated. Yes, being ruled by other masters of your body, desire and pleasure. I can't use the word boundless anymore as it defines a limit, itself a limit. Also hearing about Pierre, I've been in a strange mood all day. Oh, right. Sad but hopeful and good cheer. So, oh, okay. Welcome to the chat, Gregory. We're reading the Phaedo to see what Socrates says is the nature of the soul, whether or not it's immortal, and how we can practice that which can allow us to separate our soul from the body and experience that which is eternal and immortal, and what follows for the kind of people who live that life compared to those who don't realize the body is what is tangible, but the soul has an immortal existence, because he's on his deathbed. Well, he's literally not on his deathbed. He's about to be murdered by the state for being a philosopher. But he says that the whole point of philosophy is to separate yourself from the body, because philosophy is the art and practice of death and dying. And we're seeing this in the text we're reading from the Phaedo. So this is Socrates' last doctrine on philosophy, what it is. And he encourages us to follow him to that place where he's going as quick as we can. So we've been doing dialectics, which is the way of bringing our understanding together into a complete understanding of something, but has a kind of mystical effect, because that separating of ourselves away from our senses into pure understanding is the activity of collecting our soul together, which has a possibility of then allowing us to separate and join with our object of our understanding. And we've been doing that on the soul. Is the soul more like the body, which is made up of parts and therefore can break away, dissolve when it dies, decompose? Or is it more like this realm of being that we're most interested in, which is eternal, immortal, deathless? A whole bunch of different adjectives. And he's giving us these adjectives in the text because he wants us to pull them out. Divine, deathless, mindful, so we can do our own dialectic on being, because we want to get there. It's deathless, intelligible, uniform, indissoluble, always abiding according to the same. Or is the soul more like the body, which is human, mortal, multiform, unintelligible? You can't directly apprehend the body with your consciousness. Dissolvable. Which of the two is the soul more like? And he said, by the way, which one can you see? Have you ever seen the realm of being with your eyes? Of course not. We haven't seen beauty itself. We've seen a beautiful thing. We've seen beauty as an adjective. We've seen equality as an adjective describing two things. But we haven't seen equality itself, or beauty itself, or justice or goodness itself with our physical eyes. So that's one of the characteristics of the realm of being. And his question is, what's the soul like? Have you ever seen a soul? Therefore, it's more like this realm of being. And if it's more like that, then it's singular. It's not multiform. Therefore, it's probably not going to disperse when your body dies. Which is good, because he's saying, hey, philosophers should be practicing dying. Otherwise, you're going to be dragging yourself around through the body. Philosophy, rightly, is really practicing to die. This is the text here. And those who are not into philosophy, their souls are stained and impure. They have been beguiled by the desires and pleasures of the body, and believe nothing else is true than the physical world that you can see and touch and drink and eat and use for sexual purposes. But you would also therefore be accustomed, you'll be training yourself to hate and fear and avoid that which is dark and formless to your eyes, but is knowable, intelligible, and tangible to philosophy. You'd be in the grip of the corporeal. You'll be in service of your body. So who is the master? Who is the servant? If your body is dragging you around. We talk about this in ghost stories. The ghosts that hang around grave sites because they've still got work to do. They're still attached to the physical world in some way. So that's kind of like our reincarnations. He talks about people interested in gluttony and arrogance become reincarnated into donkeys. People interested in tyranny and injustice become wolves and hawks. But what do we want? How do we reincarnate into the realm of the gods, like the most good daemons? One of our questions, and we bring questions with us, is what exactly is this daemon? If Socrates has spent his life to become like the most good daemon, what is the daemon? In fact, he's being killed because he says, yeah, I have this inner spirit. It's called a daemon. It's like your inner voice. It constantly communicates to me for my benefit. We all have that. But that's not official religion. How dare you have a direct line to the divine? So that's why he's being murdered. But people who have the regular virtues only control their desires because they don't want to lose all their money, if they're a lover of money. Or if they're a lover of honor, if they want to be famous, then they don't chase their vices or their desires because they don't want to be thought of as bad. Their fear of losing their honor or their fear of losing their property. But philosophy is to accomplish a kind of deliverance or separating from the body, leaving or, what was the word? Leaving or releasing from the place of the body, which is also a purification. But also, if you're not a lover of learning, if you're not loving learning, and if you're not applying this learning to philosophy, then you are engaged in self-imprisonment. Self-imprisonment is the greatest assistant of your own imprisonment. And then, of course, we get a bunch of adjectives that help us do a dialectic. I have some notes here. Dialectic, of course, has two terms, self and other. You pick two and you relate them together. What can you say about self according to self? What could you say about philosophy itself? What can you say about how philosophy relates to another? Well, we can pick the soul. How does philosophy relate to the soul? And that's what we have here. What does philosophy do? So that's self to other. So make a dialectic on this, Socrates is saying. What does this philosophy do to the soul? Encourages her, tries to free the soul, reveals to the soul that searching through the eyes is full of deceit. Same with the other senses. Philosophy persuades her to withdraw from these as far as you're able to, and to summon yourself together. Collect your soul, self into self, and only trust that self and nothing other, any one of the real beings that you would intellect self according to self. So this is the intellecting of the real beings. This is anything else won't lead to truth. Yeah. Become fully yeeted from the yeet yourself from the body. I'm from the chat. In contrast to Socrates discussing separating from the body, I've found with my pursuit with philosophy of using the body to amplify the mind and will, and to use the body to slingshot deeper into self. I think a metaphor is the philosopher may evolve into the centaur or cowboy. The wise and self-proven man is leading harmony with the body and its amplification and feeling attributes, abilities. So instead of dying, realize and ride the horse or else life is a nightmare. As a pun, very clever. Helping us get the pun by the brackets. Yeah, no, post it here and share it in Discord. That's an interesting idea. Of course, we can recognize that with yoga. There are a lot of physical uses of the body, breath work, yoga work, stretching work, poses, and all these sorts of things that are used to do this slingshot effect. In the Republic, where he talks about the virtues, before he hits those four virtues, sound-mindedness, courage, wisdom, justice, he talks about the two preconditions, music and gymnastics. Music is some sort of ability to recognize states of mind. It's kind of like a mini philosophy. To recognize that people have a state of mind, and that state of mind causes their lyrics. The words, are they imitating other people's words? Are they singing their own song? What kinds of words do they use? There's a certain harmony in their outward movement. and they have a certain internal rhythm. I'm not sure which is the internal harmony, which is kind of like how harmonized are you with yourself, how unified is your internal self, and how do you move out in the world? How do you function? Gymnastics, which accompanies music, is some sort of creation of physical energy or ki, which can be translated into spiritual energy. So breathing deeply from your stomach is one of the ways, especially when you're meditating. So that's an interesting idea, yeah. Using your body to stimulate psychic energy or ki, or physical energy that can be converted into usia, that can amplify. And sure, and if you can use your physical body in some way to motivate yourself to get into philosophy, then great. Keeping in mind there is a part of your soul that isn't going to be attached with the body. That whatever activities you're doing with the body, your soul is to separate from that, gain the benefit of that, to leave the incorporeal, to enter the realm of being. And that's truth. So yeah, it's an interesting theory. I like it. Beat Saber. Yeah, gymnastics he uses metaphors, so it's not actually music. All the way through the Republic, he uses metaphors for how we would train people within a society as a metaphor for your own soul. So we would get the young kids and we'd teach them music first. And we'd also teach them how to do gymnastics, to train their body. Of course, that's a metaphor for this training of the soul. Music, if there is some sort of state of mind that affects your lyrics, that affects your rhythm, that affects your harmony, are these parts of the soul that you can recognize in yourself and in others? That when you learn the dialectic, you can use that ability to see and judge people, to know where they're at, whether they're going to be open to philosophy, and your own state of mind. Are you being motivated by your pleasures and pains and fears and desires, or are you following, seeking the truth? Are you gathering yourself together? Are you dispersed? Do you have a disharmony? Gymnastics, of course, talks about developing an inner power. Dragon Ball Z Ki, or when you do we're talking about different yogas, Qigong, it's kind of movements to stimulate an inner energy. I have to thank you, Jet. I found in one of my dreams a triad. The person was looking at me and they said, pretty, good looking, cute. Oh, cool. So you're using your triad skill tree to affect your seeing in the dream. Interesting. So when the person said that of you, what was your response? What was your music? What was your state of mind? How did you respond? What were your lyrics? What were your words that you used? Did you have I thought that I'd say felt good. How did you act? What was your rhythm? Oh, you were confused. Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. Did you voice that question? Yes. Dream analysis. The difference between dream interpretation and dream analysis is interpretation is what we're training ourselves to free ourselves from. In spirituality, of course, we're learning that if we see through our physical senses, we are deceived. Philosophy shows that we are imprisoned and deceived. He even says even the poets Like right at the start, he said, let's go back to it. Even the poets are forever, the word's not murmuring, the word is repeating in the Greek. Even the poets are forever repeating to us that we neither see nor hear anything accurately. So surely these perceptions related to the body are neither accurately or accurate or clear. When we add what's not there, or we miss what is there, we're interpreting. What's new, well, it's old, but it's been recently rediscovered as something called dream analysis through the work of Dr. Pierre Grimes, who passed away a couple of days ago, sadly. Well, I'm still in Sibius and Seabees' camp. I'm sad about it. But he showed that you can do something called dream analysis, which is to understand accurately the message of the dream. And this has been the topic of today. We talked about, well, what's the difference between philosophy and the way it's taught in schools? Well, they bombard us with a whole bunch of different opinions. We don't know what to do with those opinions. We don't know how to make sense of whether or not Kant's true or whether he's crazy, whether Hegel is on the ball or not, whether Nietzsche was talking nonsense or whether he was legit. But real philosophy, this philosophy, gives us what we need to as the paradigm for the truth. And we're seeing more and more that it's something to do with dianoia, which uses the logos and dialectic applied to the real beings. So, and we're practicing the dialectic too as we go. Real philosophy, right. I mean, it's impolite to say because our modern way of being is to say everybody's right. It's rude to call anybody wrong, which is insane. But everybody's entitled to their own opinion, we say. Everyone's entitled to their ignorance. Because there's no consequence of people being false about what's true. I mean, they don't live their lives according to what they believe is true. Because we know that's crazy. So, if that's the case, if there is truly a paradigm for knowing truth, thumbs up. We talked about we apply it to learning philosophy so we can recognize, oh, where did Nietzsche miss the mark with all his nihilism bull stuff? Which influenced Hitler, which, influenced human history. So there is an influence to ignorance, a consequence. So we can apply understanding the paradigm to understanding human history, but also understanding our own development. If there is a paradigm, if there is a ladder of the dialectic through the logos, leading us from all these different, in this sort of way, we can recognize, oh, there are all different sorts of thinking or understanding on one side and states of mind. Our understanding and our knowledge, our dianoia and our nous, the two fundamental aspects of being human that come together to lead us to the self. Hey, Nietzsche was down here on this ladder. Nihilism, materialism, relativism, reductionism, all the different ways of thinking, but also there's a corresponding state of mind. If you're nihilist, if you don't think anything matters or anything is real, you might be sad or depressed. Anyway, so we talked about this ladder of development, which is kind of music. Can you recognize the state of mind somebody is in and their lyrics from which they sing? What's their thinking? What's the language they use? If that's the case, then the logos unfolds in every level of reality, meaning there is a kind of way of thinking that you can make sense of nihilism. You can make sense of people who only think the material world exists. You make sense of people who are relativist and say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Nothing is real, it's just opinions. And so on, all the way up the list from the world of becoming, the physical world, to the realm of being. There's some people who don't think that the world of being exists. They never get past this line. They never become philosophers because philosophers direct their understanding to this, the logos of being. That's what we're reading. How do we separate the soul from the body such that we can not be imprisoned, and be free to apprehend, understand, and experience. Those two, understanding and experience, understanding a state of mind, are the beings. Which means if it unfolds in every reality, then it's also in our dreams, meaning we have a paradigm for understanding without interpretation, even our dreams. And if that paradigm is the use of the dialectic, then dream analysis would therefore, it would necessarily follow, and beautifully follow, that by applying the dialectic to our dreams the same way as we've been applying it to these adjectives and these interesting ideas in our ladder up, the same way we've been applying it to our shadow, our problems, our blocks, you can also apply it to dreams. Which gives us a lovely, you've got your logos ladder towards destiny, your shadow that you purify yourself, that leads you to your repeating problems or fate. And you've got dreams which give you messages about both. You got another triad.
Wow.
So yeah, to understand dreams, like there's a joke like, oh yeah, you want to bore someone, say, oh, I had a funny dream last night. It's boring to most people. Oh, I don't want to hear your weird dream. Because it's meaningless to most people. Why? Because it's not real. What makes something meaningful if it doesn't apply to the self or reality? But that's only because they're not philosophers yet. They haven't awoken philosophy. Awoken the logos. They don't know how to ask questions and judge answers through a paradigm, through a pattern called the dialectic that leads to truth and understanding about both. So, yeah, good notes in the chat. So in the dream, oh wow, so many good notes. Oh my goodness. So many good insights. Well done. So in the dream, the dreamer recognized a key moment. Like what we're doing in the text. Has there been any key moments in the text? Has there been any key words? Has he dropped something that really stands out to us? We focus in on that. And what do we ask? What is he saying about it? So we can understand it. Is he giving us words? And is he describing what it's like? What it's like to collect yourself outside of the body. But also, so right here, this is a key point. So in the text, here's a key point. Well, our self-imprisonment, when we chase our, when we cling to the body, we become wholly imprisoned in it. This happens through the desires, by the way. Self-imprisonment is the greatest assistant of our own imprisonment. So he's talking about our problem. That should stand out to us. So let's check it out. But those who are lovers of learning recognize that when philosophy takes hold of us, our soul is in a state of affairs. When we begin in philosophy, all we know is our physical world. That's our whole world. It's all we've grown up with. Everybody tells us, hey, the physical world is real. Get money and be famous. Those are the two biggies. Because money allows you to have a house, have property, fulfill your desires, have nice food. And fame is kind of like what you want once you've got those needs met. So in philosophy, that's where we're at usually. And we just kind of said, oh, well, anything, it's democracy, any desire. Do whatever you want, whatever you like to do. It's just as good as anything else. But then philosophy grabs us. There's something more to this. There is meaning. There is a pattern. There is a reason for your life here. There is a significance to how you live. It's not anything is anything. That's crazy talk. It's ignorance. What does philosophy do? Encourages us. Tries to free us, free our souls, by revealing to our souls that searching through the eyes is full of deceit. Same with the ears and the other senses. persuades us to draw ourselves away from those, to summon ourselves together, collect ourselves outside of the body, self by self, and trust only that and the realm of being that we are now experiencing, that which is eternal. And what were the words? See, this is another good thing about doing a dialectic. Instead of having to scroll back to find the key words, the key terms, the key logos, we'd have it in a dialectic. Deathless, divine. Actually, did we do one? Yeah, here we go. What is being? Deathless, intelligible, uniform, indissoluble, always abiding. Oh, and so we've got another section of the text here. We can say divine as well. So he's talking about what it's like. What is it like? But then he's also talking about what it's not. So we do side B. Ignorance, fear, wild desires, human defects. That's the consequence. Self, how it will relate to what philosophy isn't, love of the body, how it will relate to us. But we also talk about how philosophy, if it does exist, relates to us. How it relates to our reincarnations. Encourages us, tries to free us. So then we go back into our dialectic. If being is, and we talk about self to others. What does it do? It encourages us. It tries to free us. So he's giving us what we need to do a dialectic on being and the soul. I'm picking philosophy in relation to the soul in this particular dialectic. You pick an S, you pick an O. But it's the same sort of questions we ask in a dream. What was the key point in your dream? When they said this, oh, okay. So we can ask the same thing. What was their state of mind? What was their lyrics? What were the words that they used? How did they function? What was their what was their harmony? Did they function in a harmonious way with you? Did they sync up? And what was their rhythm? I don't know what rhythm would be. What was their character like? And how did you respond? What was your state of mind? In this key turning point, not in the text, but in your dream. And he talked about saying, oh, I said I was in a state of confusion. That's the state of mind. What were your words? Why me? How did you function? Did you do what you wanted to do with this person, or did you stop yourself? So how did the narrative unfold because of the function? Did you reach your goals? Well, I didn't really I wanted to really talk more with this person, so I was blocked from my goals. I wasn't able to move my feet in a good rhythm. I wasn't able to function with them harmoniously. I wasn't able to say the things I wanted to say, and all of those three things come from the monad of your state of mind. Same questions we ask, and we can recognize this as the triads. We talked about the triads of, let's find our triads up here, of the soul. Yeah, here we go, here's some nice ones. Look for some nice triangles. So here we have the triad of the parts of the soul, the snowman. You've got your belly, your heart, and your head, which is a metaphor for your inward desiring part, the biggest part, your outward moving, and your planning. So we got a bunch of triads. You could write that to your wisdom. How wise were you in your head, in your planning? What does wisdom do? Uses the logos to apprehend being this way. So what was your logos about? Did you talk with this person? Or were you blocked? Was there a block there? What about your courage or your power or your outward moving? How did you function towards them? Did you function towards them in the way that you would have liked to, or was there a block there? with our standard being excellence, of course. That's what we're learning in the text. What is the excellence? What does Socrates say is the excellence way of being? That gives us the paradigm and standard against which we can judge deviations, missing the mark. Or, how was your sound-mindedness? How was your activity? Did you reach your goals? Were you conflicted within yourself? Were you able to reach what you were desiring for yourself in the dream? And of course, we recognize that your words, your outward moving, and your inward desiring, or your wisdom, courage, and sound-mindedness, or your logos, your functioning, and your, activity. Yeah, how your activity, what you, not this is how you function towards others, this is how you function towards your inner goal. They are all following the monad. That's a triad under a monad called justice. They all have justice, and they all lead up to justice. Just like we could say in your dream, you had logos, you're able to see and in some way and talk in some way, you function towards the other person, and you had some activity or goal that you were seeking. But all of those things follow your state of mind. What were you planning? How well did you outwardly move towards it? How was your internal character? They all follow the state of mind. So you could bring all these together and say logos for all of those, and state of mind, or like, what was it like? What was your state of mind like? And what was your planning, your functioning, and your activity like? Did you see well? Did you speak well? Did you act well? This is the logos, or the functioning, that follows the state of mind. This is the triad and the monad. The very same things we're asking of the text, the very same things we ask when we reflect through the dialectic on our problems, we can ask in dreams. So that's a little bit of a crash course in applying what we're reading and learning, not just for the most important things, do our life's work, escape the cycle of reincarnation, enter into the place where Socrates is at, where the better gods and better men and better activities are happening, free ourselves from our self-imprisonment. Not only all these things that we're learning here, but also our problems and understanding our dreams, a dream analysis. By the way, dreams can go both ways. Did it remind you of somewhere where you're at? So same two questions: where you at, where you're blocked. The logos and the shadow of the logos. The ladder and the ladder shadow. It could be a reminder dream. Hey, this is where you're at. You're doing well. You're reading the Parmenides. You're speaking up based on what you see. You're sharing your insights. Or, oh, this is where you're blocked. Usually dreams do both. It goes both ways. Right, and good point. There are videos of Pierre Grimes that you'll find on YouTube. The PRS. You Google Pierre Grimes PRS, you'll see some amazing talks on philosophy and dream analysis. About half of them are on philosophy, half of them are on dream analysis, if you want to learn dream analysis. Maybe down the line, we could have meetups on Discord where we could do dream analysis ourselves with each other, practice the dialectic, practice recognizing truth and excellence and deviations, where you're at, where you're stuck. They're only real two questions you can ask someone. I guess there are three questions you could ask people. Make it a triad: where you at, where you're stuck, and how are your dreams. So yeah, so maybe down the line we could jump on. Yeah, we've got a Discord channel. Kind of new to it. I'm still figuring out how to do it. I got a template, and there seems to be a lot of channels. I don't know if that's putting people off, having like 8 different or like 10 different sections, or if that's normal. I guess we'll find out as we go. People can leave their feedback. But yeah, maybe we can organize a time down the line when we get more familiar with the text, or when we get, I guess, if you're already reading the Parmenides and you're already familiar with Dr. Grimes and you're already recording your dreams, then in the near future we could do dream analysis on Discord. That could be fun. Maybe even start a live group. A lot of interesting ideas. And if you're watching this on YouTube, share your thoughts and comments on the chat, what you'd like to see, what you'd like to do, if you'd like to participate in dream analysis. Very, very, it's the best game in town. Speaking of the best game in town, the soul of the true philosopher thinks to herself that her deliverance, her releasing, must not be opposed, which is interesting. Some people who feel that, some people experience it differently, that kind of rush, kind of like going down in a lift or something like that, or over a roller coaster or something. They feel kind of a rush of their soul separating from their body. It's different for all people. That's something some people say. They might want to oppose that. Oh, that's scary, or that's different. Or what will happen to my body? Will I fall over? So you don't want to worry about those. Whatever's keeping your body up will keep keeping your body up. And do not oppose this. Keep away from the pleasures and desires and pains and fears as much as you're able, by taking into account that whenever any soul is involved in excessive pleasure or fear or pain or desire, there's our quadrad. Add that to your skill tree. Then she will not only expect such harm, which one would believe happens from selves, such as those that happen by being sick or through some expended desires, but that which is the greatest and worst and most extreme of them all, since self also takes no account that this takes place. What the heck does that mean? Okay, let's jump into another translation, because I didn't understand that English very well. So we're at 83b. Bring it up. Oh. You've been hyper-fixated on philosophical midwifery and consuming everything attached to it. Information eating. That sounds great. Sounds like you're stung. Sounds like you're doing just what Socrates is encouraging us to do. I don't see a problem there. So, believe there's no truth in that which it sees by any other means, and which varies with various objects in which it appears, since everything of that kind is visible and apprehended by the senses, whereas the soul itself sees that which is invisible and apprehended by the mind. Now the soul of the true philosopher believes that it must not resist this deliverance. That's where our translator got the word deliverance. Releasing or separating. And therefore it stands aloof from pleasures and lusts and griefs and fears so far as it can, considering that when anyone has violent pleasures or fears or griefs or lusts, he suffers from them. Not merely what one might think. For example, illness or loss of money spent, right? You'd be too lusty or whatever, you might get an illness, or you lose your money spent, but he suffers the great and most extreme evil and does not take it into account. What evil is this, Socrates? Okay, back in our text. Yes, so no wonder it didn't make sense because he wasn't there yet. So the word is not evil, of course. That's so we can recognize where does that translator miss the mark? Where is he deviating from the logos? The word evil is one of them. And of course, if we were doing midwifery with him, we would ask him questions about where he learnt that mythology of evil and so on. But that's not for now. The word is bad, of course. Kakon. So what is this worst badness? That every time a human soul feels excessive pleasure or pain towards something, at that same time, she is also necessarily led to believe that this experience that she feels excessively must accordingly be the most clear and the most real. This is the greatest badness that can follow from this, that whatever the heightened pleasure or pain is, you think it's the most clear and the most real. He's talked about this before. Our physical senses don't lead to the truth. Earlier he also said, nothing else is true. This is when you are impure, when you think nothing is true other than what you see, hear, and touch and can use for sex and eat and drink. We've been seeing that the two things a philosopher seeks is truth and phronesis. Let's just search for the word truth. Okay. So the worst evil is, and we talked last time about the thing in the Republic, courage is to hold on to the understanding about the veritable lie, the worst lie, or sometimes translated as the true lie, the one true lie about what is true and real about reality. So the biggest problem about your pleasures and pains, and especially excessive pleasures and pains, is you think that it is most real. That's significant. But this does not happen to be in this way, especially belonging to the visible realm. Right, so it's not true in the visible realm. The things that give us pleasures and pain in the physical realm are not what's real. So that's the badness, the worst badness. Is it not the case that by such an experience as this, the soul is bound to the body most especially? So it's not just the pleasures and pains and fears and desires, it's that you conclude that it's therefore real and most clear, and that's what binds you. Your perception of reality binds you. Notice we were talking about how in music and in the virtues that all of these things, your planning, your outward moving, your inward desiring, wisdom, courage, and sound-mindedness, they follow your state of mind. Your state of mind affects what words you use, how you function towards others, and what activities you pursue. And here he's saying these pleasures and pains, you can have a triad here of pleasures and pains. The significance of those is they tie to what you think is most real. And this is what binds your soul. What you consider to be most clear and real. Wow. That's the big one. That's the excessive bad. That's the biggest problem. By this, a soul is bound to the body. How so? Because her every pleasure and pain nails her to the body, as it were, by keeping self distracted, and by wielding them together, they also make her corporeal, so that she also believes that things that the body says must be true, for out of the shared beliefs and the selves that she welcomes from the body, for out of the shared beliefs and the selves that she welcomes and the things that she welcomes from the body, I think she necessarily comes to share in the body's same ways as the food, and as such she will never enter into Hades, the nightclub where Socrates is at, into Hades in a pure way. And since she is quite full of the body upon leaving, she soon falls back again into another body. Here's our reincarnation back again. And that's a bit of a joke, and is naturalized into it, just as seed that is sown. Because of these things, she cannot be part of the communion with the divine company. Wow, this is a big one. What do we want? We want to be in the communion of the divine company and of pure and uniform. What you say is most true, Socrates. Accordingly then, for the sake of these beings, the ones who love learning are orderly and virile in a just way. So we've been talking about orderly or sound-mindedness, and virile or courage. So it's those who love learning have the virtues for the sake of this. So he's nailing down not what the vice was, having some mastery of pleasures to pursue other ones, or fear of losing your honor, or fear of losing your wealth. No. It's for the sake of the communion of the divine company and of the pure and uniform. It's for the sake of those beings that we have true virtue, true sound-mindedness or orderliness, true virility or courage. He's laying out the cause of the true virtues. And he's saying, what does it all come down to? A shared belief that the things that we get excessive pleasure or pain seems to us most clear and most real. Think about the highest pleasure experiences. Did it seem like you were seeing most clearly? Did it seem like this was the realest thing? That's what nails your soul to the body and makes you naturalized to it, like a seed that is sown. Come full of the body, welcoming the body, becoming like the body. So it all comes down to, so I'm going to leave you today with a question. Oh, in the chat. So that's a question I'm going to leave you with today. Why is it this belief, you are led to belief, so it's a belief, from your excessive pleasures and pains towards something, you're led to believe that this must be most clear and real. Why is he saying it's the greatest evil, inverted commas, the greatest badness? Why is it the worst badness to believe something physical is the most clear and real? Why is that? Think about addiction. Think about habits. Think about where your soul might go after you die. Think about your everyday world pursuits. Why is Socrates singling out, hey, it's the belief that this is most clear and real. That's the worst thing. Something to wonder about. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me in the chat. A lot of interesting ideas on how we can move forward in Discord and maybe get into dream analysis. And I hope to see you next time.